Right, go live, everybody. You can start the meeting.
Oh, well, welcome everybody to this Finance and Performance Committee meeting. I'm not Morris, and Morris has been feeling a bit off colour, so hope you feel better soon, Morris, so you can hear us online.
Oh yeah, thank you. Sorry for putting you in the hot seat.
We'll make a start and move on to apologies then. Have we got some apologies?
No, I haven't, but Morris, can you speak? We can't hear you if you speak.
I've got one. Can you hear?
That out. No, we can't hear.
Yeah.
No, I just want to clarify, it's Tanya. She can hear us. Talk.
Can you hear us?
You.
No, can't.
No, we haven't got voice, so might just need to sort that out.
Sort it out for a minute.
Well, we'll get that sorted. Sorry, David, I just saw them using the mouths were moving, but I couldn't hear us.
Cool.
We can't hear them.
Okay.
Morris, can you hear me?
Yes, Tanya, I can hear you. Nobody else can, though, I don't think, by the sounds of it. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, yeah.
Yes,
There
we're going now.
We've got you.
Good.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. We'll move on to apologies then. Apology from Lyndall.
Lyndall, yeah.
Okay,
Thanks, John, for late. I assume lateness.
he is coming.
Okay.
I'll have to move.
You'll move that, Jeremy, seconder. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, carried. We move on to declaration of interest. Is there any declaration of interest? There's been none. We move on to public forum, and we have Tanya going to talk to us for 5 minutes this morning. So can you hear us, Tanya?
Yes, I can. And you can hear me, I hope.
Yes. So the floor is yours then, Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. I'm back here responding to the response I received from my two petitions to council in May. I've emailed you some correspondence about this, as I've noted in there that the responses I've received did not answer the two key questions. The first question was, can we get an improved level of service at Winton? One part of the response suggested no, that we're simply reinstating the banks to the 1 in 20, and two other parts to that response has actually referred me back to other investigations being undertaken. So there was no clear answer. There was no answer to the clear answer to the request about unspent funds, and the amount of unspent funds hasn't been calculated. My original estimate was $5 million, which I've circulated, and I've circulated since with the financial reports in front of you that the estimate is actually $4 million now, with a substantial amount having $1.3 million having been spent in 3 months. What I'd like to say to you is that the Winton and Lumsden communities need an improved level of service from their flood resilient assets to protect the communities. The long-term plan infrastructure strategy committed to improving those levels of service. The Kanoa projects, as agreed, do not deliver the same level of service. They simply reinstate to 1 in 20. Council cannot change that commitment to the community. It is a requirement of the Local Government Act that a consultation occur if significant levels of service changes occur subsequent to a plan being consulted and agreed. So my question to you today is, please advise what the proposed level of service is going to be for Winton and Lumsden, and why Council wouldn't consider setting aside part of the unspent funds to support this level of service increase. I'm not suggesting that all of the $4 million go to the RETI. The original plan was for substantial investment in Mataura and a RETI, and I would think it would be appropriate that the $4 million be halved, and that these Kanoa projects be topped up, and so that they can go back to their original intention, and that the communities achieve the level of service originally planned. I'm asking that Council resolve to transfer the funds into a special reserve before or at the adoption of the annual report this October. And that, Chair, is the end of my presentation. I still have 3 minutes for
Do we have
questions.
any questions? Verification. Jeremy?
Yeah, hi, Tanya, Jeremy here. We're obviously meeting tomorrow to have a good discussion about this with, aren't we, Stephen?
Yeah.
So we'll certainly go through this, and we, as I said, the last stuff you've just sent through, I got midnight last night, so I haven't quite got my head around everything yet, but we'll have a good session tomorrow. I'm just saying that in regards to all this too. So I went well on it today, if that's right. My
Thank you.
perspective.
Yeah, Alistair?
Tanya, could you give us your view on the letter that came to you? I'm just trying to find it in here now. I had it yesterday. Were you satisfied with that?
I was dissatisfied at the 8 weeks that it took to receive it, if I can be totally honest. In the end, it was thorough in that it captured my report, but it didn't actually state facts. So when we're asking for information, we're asking for things that come out of the accounting system and out of the Iris, wherever you capture your information. What I got back was a lot of prose and a lot of explanation about things that we all know were supposed to happen in the long-term plan infrastructure strategy regardless. And it was a repeat of that, I felt, without actually answering the questions.
Morris?
All right. Yes, Tanya. Well, I'm sorry that the letter didn't answer all your questions, and I hope that your meeting with Jeremy and Stephen can resolve those issues. We did spend a lot of time on it, and John Pemberton and I, and Patrick in particular. I know Patrick must have spent many hours putting it all together. So yes, I'm disappointed that you are not satisfied with that, but I can only hope that further discussions that you have with Jeremy and Stephen can resolve these issues. So hopefully that will be something positive we can do for you.
Thank you.
Jeremy?
I'd just like to make comment, Tanya. It is, and I know it's really, for me, it's real concern if we haven't done what we're going to say we're going to do around the LTP. So we need to really clarify those discussions, but it is a bit of a moving feast and Kanoa funding and things like that. But then there is, as you probably know in the past, if we've rated for something or we're doing something, we need to make sure that money's going where it's going. So hopefully we can clarify that or just get our heads around it anyway.
Thank you.
Making commitment to that.
Yeah, Stephen?
Through the chair, look, I look forward to meeting you tomorrow. Tanya, thanks for coming along today. Sort of echoing what the chair has just said, I mean, my commitment is to get to the bottom of this and ensure that you have an answer that is easy to understand and that our council also has that answer. So that's what I will be doing.
Thank you.
Well, Tanya, you've got an undertaking and a meeting happening tomorrow. Let's hope it can resolve your issues. You've got to have further discussions then. So I think we'll move on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks, Tanya. Okay, we move on to item 5, the confirmation of minutes. They have been circulated. Would someone like to, that was there, do so? And James Moore, seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Notification of extraordinary and urgent business. Item 6. Don't think there's anybody. We'll move on to questions then. None of those, okay. And Chairman and Councillors report, are there any We'll move on to 9.1 and ask Patrick to update on councillor requests.
Sure. Update on councillor requests. There's a very brief paper in the agenda pack where we have corrected a bridge that so in the last committee meeting, we called out some numbers have been transposed in the financial bridge, and we've supplied a correction in paper 9.1, showing in red where the numbers were transposed, in black they've been corrected. We were also asked to provide a bit more detail on the vehicle reserve. So we've clarified that there's $962,000 currently in the motor vehicle reserve. We're adding to that at the rate of about $312,000 per annum. And ostensibly, there's more than enough in our reserve to cover us at our current settings of replacing vehicles at 5 years, 150,000 Ks. At those settings, we wouldn't be replacing more than 4 or 5 vehicles per annum. So there's plenty in the reserve. And it gives us the opportunity, should we wish to consider, as we build the separate resilience reserve that we've talked about at the investment committee, we potentially could transfer some of this reserve to the resilience reserve, or some of this reserve could be used to accelerate fleet replacement easier if we want to do it. So the short answer to the question is there's plenty of coverage in terms of replacing our vehicles and the reserves that we've got. That's what's spelled out in 9.1.
Hey, Jeremy?
Yeah, thanks for that, Patrick. I think that's answered the question, and there's plenty in the reserves, and that was the discussion. We need to have as much in that reserves. And when you look at what it's cost to replace the vehicles, and I suppose that is the next question, is that we're rating for that. But do we actually need to rate that through, drop it down a bit in regards to that, around the depreciation on those vehicles? We have leased vehicles that we did have 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know about the replacement of electric resale values and lease looking ahead. How does that all play out? So, anyway, plenty there. That was the discussion for a start.
Okay, Paul.
Morris has got his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Thank you, Paul. You're keep a good eye out for that hand raise. Thank you very much. Yeah, just following on from what Jeremy said about the, we've got plenty of funds here, but I would be keen that we perhaps can convert to electric vehicles a bit faster than we would have otherwise. As part of our our carbon emissions zero plan. I know that Patrick's been working on this, so I don't ask you to do anything in particular, but I think that's something that we could perhaps consider doing with these funds. Thank you.
Alistair?
In this day and age, vehicles seem to be lasting a little longer than the 150,000 Ks. I know I usually take them to 400,000, and there's no increased cost in maintenance and things. For our constituents, could we consider, and I guess it's the investment committee that entertains this, taking them out to 200 or something along those lines, which is still only half used.
I'm sure we could consider that. I know that when Patrick actually also brought up that it's really hard to get to net zero when we have such large expenditure with river works from our contractors. So there's quite a bit to consider on this space, really.
There's a separate conversation to be had on GHG targets, which I won't sort of go into now. But in terms of sweating the asset, which is what you're suggesting, Alistair, the current settings are there because when a vehicle gets beyond 5 years and above 150,000 Ks, it's not so much that the vehicle can't be wetted out 200,000 or 250,000 Ks. These are a work tool, and if they have to be pulled out for repairs or additional servicing, we've got to trade those sorts of things off when we sort of land on those settings.
Just can I reply?
Absolutely.
In this day and age, though, these vehicles are running a hell of a lot longer than that, except Rangers sometimes that don't do it. But you know, the thing is that that's the way the modern system is. We've got to use these things, and maybe the electrics, as we're going into, will give us this of a longer use period. Yeah, but
Okay, anything else? Oh,
If
Jeremy?
I can just add, like, we've done a lot with the vehicle fleet. Like I think we're running about 11 lease vehicles than when we came down here 10 years ago. So we're being more efficient with vehicles anyway. I was just going to ask, if we go to electric, putting in charging sites, could the cost of that come out of the depreciation around vehicles? I'm just saying we could fund it, not necessarily out of somewhere else. I'm just saying we could use, and technically we need those charging units here.
Yeah, we do. So I can't see any reason why we couldn't use the vehicle reserve to fund them. They're about $3,000 per charging unit.
Not a big expense, but
Not a big
so I was just saying, well, if it's part of the vehicle fleet, then it's not necessary to have a filling. So we can grab a little money, bits and pieces. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I know we discussed the decrease in the amount of vehicles that we have. Has there been any checks on how many kilometres we're actually doing a year as we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Are we doing less Ks than what we were? And you know, nowadays when we're itemising stuff, how many times is 2 people in a vehicle instead of 1? Just that sort of stuff. And that's where the performance comes in, you know. So it would be good to know, like if we're doing 30% less Ks a year and we've only dropped 20% in vehicle numbers, maybe we need to look at keeping up with the Ks drop.
Yeah, just in quick response. So I am trying to get a unit level data set out of the EROAD system. But to be honest, a little bit of trouble getting that. But there's quite a variation across our fleet. So some of our vehicles, like some of the integrated catchment vehicles and the science vehicles, they're essentially a work tool. There's 1 or perhaps 2 people using them 5 days a week, driving them out the site and putting 30,000 Ks a year on them. Some of our utes fall into that category. Other vehicles only do about 12,000 Ks, and they're there because access to the vehicles needed, but the Ks they're driven is quite low. So I'm actually quite keen to have a really good look at this and to see whether there's a dichotomy between vehicles that need to be considered a work tool and others that might be able to be pulled more than currently pulled, so that we get better utilisation out of those vehicles that can be pulled. But we need to be able to go and do that analysis and reach those conclusions so that we can be getting it.
So is that an action that you're undertaking, Patrick?
Yeah, it's an ongoing piece.
Jeremy?
Sorry, I'm dragging this out, but just in regards to that, as we drop vehicles down, is it a value of the vehicles that we're depreciating, the cost that goes into the reserve? Or is it,
Yes.
so generally vehicle, it'd be interesting, like we've dropped vehicles out. And to Paul's answer, we looked, that's why we started getting into the fleet many years ago, saying there were vehicles only done 10,000 Ks a year, and we're going, why can't you have 1 vehicle doing 20,000 instead of 2 doing 10? And so that was challenged to the management, and they did sort some of that out. So there was some low-hanging fruit there, I think, that was sorted.
Right.
But just in regards, I'm just trying to understand that the reserves still seem to be going up a bit. It's quite high. But is that based not on historic vehicles? It'll be just the present day value depreciating depreciation levels going down. That's what gets charged to the community or to the rates. So just
I'll give you an answer and then I'll check it with Jody.
no.
But the
Yes, that's all I need to know.
But the depreciation should be based on the original purchase price of
Yeah.
the vehicle, and then its depreciation over its lifetime is
Yeah.
what should be going into the reserve. But Jody just confirming that's the case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay, any other questions? If there's not, our action is to note this, so can we have a mover and second?
I'll move that.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Second, Alistair. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, we'll move on to 9.2. That is a substantial update to Tania. It's from pages 15 to 80. Given there's a meeting tomorrow and there's been an update in the meeting, there's someone got one burning questions.
Yeah, no, I'll just say that we will, Stephen and I'll go right through this and try and answer or go right through it with Tania tomorrow, just to let everybody know that we're doing that tomorrow in regards to that. So we'll certainly try and answer all the questions, and if need be, we'll follow up on anything. So otherwise, anybody else has got any questions in regards to that?
Just in terms of that follow-on that's planned for tomorrow. One observation, as we work through the LTP and discussions subsequently, I wonder if sometimes the language we have been using is confusing. So we talk about levels of service and improving levels of service. And I think, I wonder if part of the confusion that emerges in the community is we speak of the design specifications for flood resilience, flood protection, and the fact that they have degraded over time. And I'm wondering if when we say improve levels of service, we're speaking of returning it or reinstating it to what we intended. Noting that occasionally there are places where minor or moderate realignment is proposed, but really that's less around increasing the level of service beyond the design specs, more about just being efficient and sensible with how we invest in returning the flood protection to the level of service that it was originally designed for. And I'm wondering if, when I hear the comments from Tony this morning, I'm just wondering if we need to be quite clear or more specific around what are we actually talking about when we talk about improved levels of service. Is it improving upon the original design, or is it improving upon the current state in order to return it to the level of design specifications? And that may be different in different locations, but it's make sure that we are very, very clear in our own minds and with the communications with the public around what it is we're actually talking about. Because that may be part of the challenge in this instance.
Jeremy?
Probably one of the main things is obviously when we do an LTP, it's a contract with the community. So we say we're going to do certain things. So, I mean, that's what we're going to learn too, that if we are committing and trying to work out the legalities that, on that day, that was the contract. But as data or Kanoa funding changes and things that can alter how we're going to do things in the future. So the next year it could have all of a sudden changed that there's a bigger project here and the government's going to fund it from what we originally sort of see it as we'll deal with this within community trying to rate it. So there is a point I'd like to know legally somehow if we said we're going to do that, how do we alter when things along that we're able to work within what we're given or the boundaries we're sort of work within. So, but it is really important to make sure that this comes down to what we do say we actually do it. If we don't, they go, we're rating for that, for those specific things, and where does that money go if it doesn't get spent on that? And that's probably the wee bit of probably Tania's thing. But then it's also the values, how can we alter it? Because there might be better bang for buck doing something else in a bigger way, and more extensive river management in regards to river management. How do we alter that legally? If we said that, are we contracted? Absolutely. Well, it doesn't make sense to be able to have to stick to the original deal if something better is coming along or a better outcome. So just trying to get head around that a wee bit too, around these things.
I think the problem with this too is that we've also had a paper dropped on us this morning that probably none of us have read, and it's seemingly more of a summary of concerns. So maybe we will need to take time and have a read of it at some stage and pass any comments on to Jeremy and Stephen before the meeting tomorrow. There's a huge amount of papers in the agenda. Is there any other burning questions that people look forward or ideas apart from that? I think.
Can I just
Yeah,
make a
sure.
comment? Thanks through the chair. So I do think the two matters that the chair and deputy have touched on are the key to this. So one of them is what decisions have council made?
Yeah.
And being really clear on that, noting that you will have made decisions through local government processes, through LTPs. You went out and consulted on those things, and you would have landed in a particular place. So being really clear on what those things are. And then the next thing is what the deputy chair talked to is being simple in our language so that it's easy for people to understand what we're saying in response. So that's my commitment, is understanding the decisions made and then ensuring they're well communicated to you as council and also back to Tanya. Her two questions, I think, are, whilst there'll be a lot of context behind them, I'm sure, they are quite simple questions. They're not complicated questions in themselves. So for us to be able to answer those things, we should, and that's what I want to get to the bottom of. So.
Oh, well, if there's no further discussion, thank you for that clarification, Stephen. I think we probably should move on, and we have to note the update. So, would someone like to move that?
Jeremy, you'll move that.
And all those in favour, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Carried. Well, we'll move on to the financial report on page 80, and I guess Jodie's going to come through.
So I'll just I'll step through key highlights in the report, and then we'll open it up to questions, and Jodie will support me with any questions that you might have. So, hey, look, the starting point, the end of year result was a $5.8 million favourable surplus compared to budget. So that's the headline number, but then the second headline number is that $5.5 million of that 5.8 is the outsized performance of the managed fund. So the managed fund, we've got roughly a third of the managed fund tilted towards global equities. Those are continuing to produce very high returns because of investment in AI and AI adjacent industries like chip manufacturing and data centers. And those returns have been achieved despite the US-Iran conflict. There was a bit of correction, but over the course of the year, that's the sort of performance that we've seen. So the vast majority of our favourable surplus is that over outperformance managed fund. So that leaves an underlying surplus of $0.3 million for the organisation. And there are several moving parts to that underlying surplus. So the first moving part, if you like, is our other income exceeded budget by $2.4 million. So we got better consenting, fees and charges, and type income and jobs the nature income than we had anticipated in the budget, and that led to a plus $2.4 million favourable other income variance. The second favourable variance was our operating expenditure, and that was favourable by $2.5 million. So the large components of that, salaries and wages were underspent by 1.4, contractors were underspent by 1.9. And that was partially offset by $800,000 more spent on river works and those types of initiatives than we'd planned for. So our expenditure favourable by $2.5 million, but we haven't delivered as much as we had planned to either. That's the other side of the favourable expenditure. And then the third component, which largely offsets these favourable variances, is the Kanoa impacts. So we'd anticipated more income from Kanoa than we received. So we budgeted more income than we received, and we spent more on Kanoa work than we had budgeted for. And that led to an unfavourable variance of $4.7 million in our results. And I'll go through that in a little bit more detail when we cover the Kanoa financial report. But that was the third key driver. So when you net off those three components, our overall underlying surplus was plus $0.3 million actual performance compared to budget. So that's in terms of our income and expenditure. In terms of our statement of financial position, our cash is $2.4 million higher than it was at the end of the last financial year. And that's there's a bit of, we had that $7 million LGFA loan drawdown. We've got some cash still associated with that. Our spend of cash that came in was a little bit lower this year than last year. We've got the unrealised gains from the managed fund and reinvestment of interest and dividends, and that's $7 million higher than last year. And if you add those together, they pretty much explain that we have a movement in our assets of $9.8 million this year versus last year. The third key report is the statement of cash flows. And it somewhat sort of mirrors this. So our opening balance in terms of cash last year, end of last year, negative $3.1 million. This year we closed at plus 6.6, so movement of $9.7 million. We have the drawdown of the debt from the LGFA. You will recall that we asked to draw down $7 million in debt. And that's a key component of the cash flows. We've got an increase in payments to suppliers and employees, $1.2 million, and we have less funding received compared to the previous year, $0.9 million, and we've partially offset by less purchasing of property, plant and equipment from Steed Street in the previous year compared to the current year. And those are the key movements that explain $9.7 million of cash movement this year compared to last year. So last two parts of the report, our sundry debtors, you'll be aware that those are debtors that aren't related to rates. They're fees and charges and consenting type debtors. Those are up this year compared to last year so this time last year we had sundry debtors of $335K. This year we've got sundry debtors of $888K. The reason that it's up this year from last year is that in June we had several large processing consents that we billed out. DOC for Lake Waituna, we had a gold mine consent, and we had a groundwater discharge consent, and those totaled $500K. So they were pretty big consents billed at the very end of the year, and our debtors is now up a little bit compared to last year as a consequence. And then the last part of the report is the rates debtors, and our rates debtors are $0.8 million, which is quite a pleasing reduction from $1.3 million comparative this time last year. And what we're anticipating is that as we get more of our ratepayers onto our payables capability, you'll recall we implemented payables last year, which makes it easy for ratepayers to go onto payment arrangements and pay their rent off over time. As we get that better and better utilised, we're hoping that our rate debtors will drop further and further, but it's good to see some initial progress and reduction in our debtors. So look, those are the highlights that I sort of pulled out from the financial report, but I'm very happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions. Paul.
Thank you, just for you, Chair. The one statement that you said there was with regards to Kanoa projects, there was more spending and less funding. Is that the percentage that the government give us because we've overspent our on the project, or Is that through a lack of good management, or is that through
No,
overruns? Or
yeah, there's a little bit to it. So we budgeted more income than we received. And there's a bit of timing in that. So there are two things to be aware of. So one is that we retrospectively claim the income. So we have to spend first and then claim second. And then the second thing to be aware of is that with the wind event last year and other things that happened, the program slowed down a bit. So the work is still anticipated to happen and the income is still anticipated, but we didn't earn and claim the income in the financial year that we just closed. So that's the income piece. In terms of the expenditure, there is a bit of expenditure that has been that has gone in, sanctioned and approved expenditure to stand up the Kanoa program and have the project resource capabilities needed to run the program. And that's a bit more than was budgeted for when the budget was put together for the last financial year. So the impact of those two things, the less income than anticipated, more operating expenditure than planned, create that net $4.7 million variance to budget.
okay, can I ask a supplementary?
Yeah,
Just with regards to this whole Kanoa funding and Kanoa expenditure. You know, we had an idea of what it was going to spend at the start, and we're partway through. Do we do a measurement now and say, are we going to end up in the same spot we planned on being, or are we going to be spending more than what we thought because we're partway through? Do we need to do a stop and measure? Do we need to do a check? Because it's very important, because I don't want to get to the next meeting and know that it's going worse than what it was planned.
Yeah. Would you mind if I address that question when we cover the Kanoa financial report?
That's fine.
Thank you.
Jeremy, did you have?
Just quick, just on that. So the 4.7 million, it's written there that basically the revenue just hasn't been received because of the timing. That's what it says there. And the first plan, because budget to Kanoa has not been received due to delays. So the money, so is that 4.7 going to be? That's indicating that we're actually going to receive the revenue for that.
No, the 4 point. So when we go through the Kanoa report, there's a table, Kanoa financial report. There's a table in there that splits out the revenue and the expenditure elements of that 4.7.
Yeah.
So it is both less revenue earned than anticipated in the financial year and more operating expenditure. The revenue piece, we anticipate catching that up. So when the work gets done and claimed, the revenue will come through, and it's more of a timing issue. But there is that unfavourable expenditure as well. So
that's part of the 4.7.
And apologies, the financial report, I actually updated it to make it better reflective of that, but the changes didn't stick in DocAssembler. So it's best explained in the Kanoa financials.
No, good. Just brought up the wind event. Sorry, I've got a couple of quick questions. The wind event, obviously, and liaison committees paid for damage, like to clear willows and everything else from the rivers. Have they ever come back? Because we did say we wanted to know what it cost the liaison committees and their budgets to clear the storm damage, which should have probably come out of disaster reserves. But we didn't want to affect their annual budgets. Has that ever been teased out?
I'm not.
Because we did ask them, we have asked them to say, hey, look, if they spend 50 or 100,000 to clear willows out because the hurricane went through, we didn't want that to affect their business as usual budgets. That should have come out of disaster reserves when you look at our reserves. So can we just get that?
Yeah.
I don't need to answer it today, but I want to know that something is being done there.
No, hasn't. So Jeremy, it hasn't come back to me, but very happy to take an action and take a look at that. Yeah.
And managed funds, do you know how much we've got in managed funds today?
Approximately.
Just approximately
41 million.
41.
Yeah.
Not going down anyway, as I was saying.
I've also got a question from Morris.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was related to Jeremy's comment there on the investment funds. And no, given that they are a lot higher than what we had thought they might be this year, I wonder if it's a question for the investment committee rather than this committee to look at better utilisation of unrealised gains. I know that it's a very tricky subject because some years you get a really good return and other years it's not so good, and you have to look at it in the long term. But it does seem to me that there might be a possibility to be a bit more flexible with the unrealised gains to do more work or in fact reduce rate increases. So is that something that we can recommend to the investment committee, or is it best dealt with at the invest committee, or do you think that the restrictions we've got at the moment, the rules we've got at the moment, are appropriate given the variability in the stock market?
If I could respond.
Yes.
Through you, Chair. So there's a brief response to that, Morris, and so the investment committee has asked us to look at a resilience reserve. So where we've got outsized returns in the managed fund, can we redirect those returns to build up a resilience reserve so that if the managed fund underperforms or the port underperforms in any given year, we've got insulation against that. So Scott and I have got an action as a consequence of the investment committee discussion, and we're working out a proposed resilience reserve, which would see some of that excess fund transferred into that reserve. So that's an action that's live from the investment committee.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yes, I knew something was going on. So that sounds like that is that issue. Thank you.
Alistair?
I guess we get hit with this every year, Patrick, and that it comes out that we've made a profit of X amount of dollars. And it's quite hard to explain, because as soon as you go into the detail, you lose your customer. I was just thinking, would it be possible to pull out what we're doing as a council, and then Kanoa comes out separately if it comes out to the public, if you get what I mean? Because we have to field these things. You know, you're making 5 million or something. What are you doing? Can you not work out what the hell you're doing in your budget and get it a hell of a lot more accurate? Or that 5.8, whatever it is, and is actually tagged, it's going into expenditure for next year, and this is what it is.
If I can just respond briefly. So Alistair, that's why we've sort of taken pains with the financial reporting to be really clear what the managed fund element of the financial performance looks like, and then what the underlying council operations result looks like. So we've tried to be sort of very clear and separate those things. And if you take the managed fund performance away from our full year surplus, then the underlying surplus is a much smaller number, and it's then explained by those key movements that I called out earlier. The key message really is managed funds generated most of the return. Underlying return is quite modest. In terms of that underlying return, there's favourable variance because we've underspent and underdelivered a little bit, but that's then offset by the effort that's gone into Kanoa and the revenue for Kanoa not getting up yet. That's how our results are explained.
Thank you. I understand that, but when I go out to my constituents or ratepayers, they don't want a lecture or not a lecture. They don't want an explanation for 15 minutes or less on how it's all made up. They just look at the figure. Can we get it more accurate? In other words, our budgeting becomes more accurate too.
I don't know that we can get the budgeting more accurate. Well, I guess there are two answers to that. So in terms of the managed fund, we deliberately budget conservatively, and the managed fund has been achieving excess returns. So that's just the way it is. We can't sort of predict what global equities are going to do, and so on. It could go the other way next year, and we could have an adverse result. Managed fund could drive an adverse component of our result. As far as the underlying performance of the organisation is concerned, when you take the managed fund impact away, that is something we've been working on. So when we produced the annual plan budget this year, we've taken pains to go out to each of the directorates and try to get the budget more closely aligned to what they'll actually spend. So that was part of how we drove the reduction to a 3.25% rates increase compared to an annual plan increase of 12.8%. We've sought to make the budgets more accurate and the available funding more closely aligned to what we think is actually going to be spent. So we have been doing that.
Right. I know this will come up in Kanoa, but at the bottom of page 89, it's got the bank balance and the forecast debt. And I know that one of those things that affects it is the Kanoa, and to change that, you do the work and you carry the expense before you get the money in. And I know your table in Kanoa helps to address that, but that's why it looks a little unusual there, isn't it?
Yeah. Correct, and we have to when I talk through the Kanoa report, I'll explain to what further reporting we need, because we have to fund our 40% of Kanoa, and we have to be across the claims support income, our ongoing expenditure, the cash, and therefore what debt funding we need to consider over the coming years. So we do need to improve.
Yeah, to Councillor Gibson's point, it's not, I don't believe it's the accuracy of the reporting or the budgeting. It's actually the complication of the various different segments of the reporting that actually add, I suppose, a degree of complication when we actually present to our constituents. So it's, I don't know if there is, but if there is an opportunity to simplify that messaging in some way, shape, or form.
Would it be helpful if I took an action to produce some, I guess, straightforward notes to explain the financials, so that you can use those for your consideration?
Potentially something that's actually a lot, I suppose, easier for our community to see and understand where those variances.
I'm happy to do that. I think the way we report and explain our financials is by necessity a little bit complicated in terms of what we produce for this committee, but it doesn't mean we can't produce some more straightforward notes that you could use for your constituency.
Can I just,
Yeah,
quick supplementary. If we've got 50,000 ratepayers, if we've got them, I don't think we have. How many do we have? Then effectively at 5.8 million, it's $116 a ratepayer. That's the bit they get. Thank you.
okay. Jeremy?
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. I can totally understand what Councillor Gibson's getting to. As a requirement for us councillors in the Finance and Performance Committee, these figures are great. They're what's required. It's what we require. But I can understand completely when it comes to the constituent, the one pager saying, "Hey, this is where we are," and everything else. And I know what you mean by $116 a rate pay. You know, I think on my rates for Hickman and related stuff, there's about $102 that relate to that on my rates. So if that's more, then we need to have a one pager to say, "Hey, this is where we're at. This is where we're hoping to be." Not a dumbed down version, but a simplified version, because not everyone can read this, but we are required to. So sure, for the finance and performance, but it'd be great to have a one pager for.
Happy to take that action.
Yeah, thank you.
Jeremy?
I was just going to say, it's all about the managed funds. Like their budgets always look I mean, we're pretty lucky to have those managed funds, have cash, and they're obviously backed by the reserves. We need those funds, but in the long-term plan, and it's a bit like Morris's discussion, I think we're about 10 or 11 million, I think, ahead in regards to some of the, go back 5 years to where we were going to be with their managed funds. So it's certainly a discussion we're having in the investments committee in regards to just around what do you do with that money? Do you bank it and leave it there as a nice little nest egg? But the reality is that you're lifting your rates up too, so there's a balance there. But we don't know. That could be a negative 5 million next year if something goes seriously wrong, mainly because the managed funds could go up and down. So you can't budget for it. You've got to put it into play. The actual OPEX, the general rates, that's where you look at, are we doing the work? The managed funds, the bonus out the side for the community, but hopefully that'll be good for them in the future anyway. So it's good. Those discussions are certainly having that in the investments committee too. So talking about that.
It's a good positive debate to be able to have.
Yes.
I think it was 29 million in the LTP, so well above that. Okay.
Especially when you've got other councils that are borrowing money to pay the bills. I think the communities are.
Okay, no more questions on the financial report. Can I have a mover and second? Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ewan. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to Kanoa at 9.4 on page 94. Petra?
Yes, thank you. So look, the Kanoa report's relatively new and was requested at the last Finance and Performance Committee, and we've assumed that it's sensible to keep this report going. But the report, as it's currently written, it explains the year-to-date impact of Kanoa in the last financial year. And a separate part of the report explains the project-to-date expenditure. So if I cover the year-to-date expenditure first, $1.6 million of Kanoa funding was received for the year ended 30 June 2026, whilst $2.6 million of expenditure was incurred. So if you like, the Kanoa impact on our standard operating results was $1 million unfavourable in the year just gone. In terms of the financial impact of actual compared to budget, we had budgeted to receive 4.2 million of revenue, and this goes towards answering the question, Jeremy. So we'd budgeted to receive $4.2 million of revenue and incur $1.6 million of expenditure. But due to timing of work and having to claim retrospectively after work is completed, as at the end of the financial year, we'd only received $2.6 million of revenue, whilst we'd incurred $2.7 million of expenditure. So we had an unfavourable impact against budget of negative 2.6 million on the revenue side and negative 2.1 on the expenditure side, so negative $4.7 million overall. So that's the tie back to the earlier financial report. In terms of project to date expenditure, tranche 1, which goes across Aparima, Te Reo and Ariti, we've spent $2.4 million against a project budget of 6 million. So 39% of the anticipated project budget for tranche 1 has been spent. Now, David has asked if we can enhance this report, and we've taken an action to do this so that we can show how complete we think we are in terms of the work done as well. And that's a very sensible way to look at this. How much have we spent? How complete is the work? How much is left for the rest of the program? Tranche 2 is less advanced, as you'll be aware. So tranche 2 across Mataura, Ariti and Owapuni, 1.2 million spent against an overall program budget of 24.9 million. So we're only about 5% of the way in terms of spend. But again, we'll get a sense from the ICM team about how complete we are as well, and we'll enhance this report next time round. As I touched on earlier, and as we progress forward, I am keen to improve this reporting. I think we have to have a really good picture in terms of over the next several financial years, what are our anticipated Kanoa claims, revenue dollar claims? When do we think they're going to happen? What is the monthly project expenditure? What is the monthly contractor expenditure in terms of the work being done? How much are we capitalising? How much remains as operating expense? And what is the impact on cash flow? Are all the sorts of questions we should be asking and answering for you. And that then sort of directly influences what our future debt situation needs to look like. So you're aware that we're funding 40% of the Kanoa work ourselves. Those are the components that then need to go into our overall debt forecasting, overall cash flow forecasting, so that we can come back to you and recommend our next tranches of debt, why we need to incur them when we do, and how much they're going to be. So I am planning on us working with the ICM team, pulling that type of reporting together and enhancing this report to include that for the next committee meeting. So that's kind of my very quick step through of the Kanoa financial report, and happy to take any questions.
Jeremy, to go and, we're talking about the 4.7 million. So we haven't got the income there, but there is income coming for because of timing. So the 2.6 million negative there, we expect to get that.
Correct.
That's right. So that's just a timing thing. But the contractor, the 2.6 million contract, is that over and above Kanoa budgeted? Or are we claiming that should come in as part of the Kanoa funding?
So the contracted people and operating expense, we've incurred, if you take those budgets together, we've incurred $2 million, $2.1 million more expenditure than we budgeted for in the financial year that's just closed.
Is it physical or is that just consultants? I would like clarity on what that is, because it seems quite a large figure. That's all I'm just saying outside.
I'm happy to take an action to break it down for you if you like. But Karen, do you have any off the top of your head? Do you have a sense of that? So in terms of what we budgeted for contracted people and operating expense for the last financial year, we've incurred $2.1 million more than we had budgeted for in the last financial year. Breakdown of that, you may not have that off the top of your head, or Jodie.
So the budget is actually largely for capital expenditure, not operational expenditure, which is why it's coming through as the variance. So it's not that we didn't plan on spending money at all, it's just the allocation of how it was entered into our annual plan and corresponding LTP, etc. So the fact of how that expenditure has actually been incurred with the works that have been done, it's now that split between operational to capital, which is what's causing this sort of discrepancy. So it's not actually a variance in total terms of dollars, but it's the allocation of how we've categorised the work, because now we actually know the milestones and all the detail is more in that program planning space. We're able to apply the split, whereas when we actually did the budget, we were unsure, and so it was allocated as capital.
Clear as mud. Me and I'm worried about the community. So can we take an action just to clarify, to explain that better in simple terms, please?
So just for my clarity, Jodie, so we had budgeted to incur it as so I'm just making sure.
You're saying it's not a variance, but you've had to put it in there.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's purely an allocation.
Yeah.
And how we allocated the budget. So the capital budget obviously doesn't go into your operational expenditure, whereas this is operational expenditure that we are unable to capitalise.
So we've incurred effectively, we've incurred $2.1 million of unbudgeted operating expenditure as a consequence of that.
So you'll be able to tell me what that was.
And we'll break that down for you.
That's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there's an action point being noted. Any other questions on that?
I was really impressed just saying the upper email did 101% of the job. That's really good. The budget.
If there's no more questions, then we're to note the report. Thanks, Jeremy, and thanks, Phil. Yeah. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. We move on to item 9.5 on page 8.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. It's quite useful to have the finance report and that new Kānoa report preceding this one, because they did do a good explanation for some of the activity in the business plan report that I'm going to talk about. So I will be touching on some of the things that we previously discussed this morning a little bit as I go through this report. Generally, over the Q3, Q4, we do see a big uplift in our expenditure, and in Q4 represented about 30% expenditure against the work programs. Pleasingly, many of the key focus areas finished at or around 100% of the planned expenditure. And then of the ones that were under, a lot of that was due to deliberate decisions to pause or slow down expenditure in some of those areas. Where we did overspend, and we'll just spend a little bit of time talking about the one of the primary contributor to that was in relation to the Kānoa or co-funded projects, which contributed over $2 million unfavourable underspend in the managed flood resilience work program, focus area. If we adjust for that, the overall expenditure for the year in that key focus area was again at or about planned expenditure levels for the year and similar to last year. Even though there were delays in starting some of that Kānoa work, Q4 did see a really big uplift in that. So $1.5 million, or about 60% of that full year expenditure did happen in Q4. I'll just touch on this, and I've mentioned previous updates, and again, just for general awareness, that there is an unfavourable variance in this report relating to the Jobs for Nature, about $1.1 million, although we do have funding to sort of fully offset that expenditure as well. If I look through to next year or this year, 26-27, there's going to be a familiar theme coming through the business plan reporting, as a lot of the activities we talk about in this report are ones that will continue through for next year as well. However, there's going to be a greater focus on some of our strategic projects, some of which have come through this committee for approval, like financial management, information system, HR system. We'll start to have a greater lens on those to be incorporated into the business plan report going forward. So otherwise, happy to take any questions on the report.
I just wonder if we just move through it page by page so that people can bring up in the plans on it. So if we move on to page 100, the work program. Is there any questions on that page? Not. We'll move on to page 102, the managing flood risk, key focus area. Alison.
I see that there was nothing budgeted for co-funded projects, I guess, Kānoa.
Yep. I'm pretty sure that was the explanation between capital and OpEx, so it was just budgeted in the wrong accounting category, if you like. So the budget was there within the overall organisational plan, just not reflected in this one. Thank you.
The river management and land drainage run over by $500,000. Is that actually budget extra, is that what that is?
I can't speak specifically to that 500, so I'd have to come back to you on that if that's okay, Chair.
Any other questions on item 2? Not, we'll move on to 103, which is the achieve freshwater outcomes.
Sorry. Just a quick one from the last page. Just the property management, that covers, is that cover aware lease land as well as this building in regards to?
Yep.
So just 150 odd K up, is that something to do with this building?
Yeah, and that's in the discussion point, says talks to some of the key variances in the bottom on each of the pages, some of which I covered in my update, but that one and property management is specifically around the insurance, yeah.
Insurance.
Appreciation of insurance, yeah.
Okay, Hank. Alistair?
Have we gone over to 103?
Yep.
I just noticed with the Southern Farm Plan, 680 to budget against 608. I understood that the Ministry of the Environment were funding most of that or some of that. Can you explain, sir?
If it's funded work,
Well, just,
from MFE.
yeah, like we've still got a actual spend of 618.
Yep.
We budgeted 608, we're below, but I understood that most of the sell or whatever the expenses were coming from MFE.
Yeah, I believe that is the case. Yeah.
So why? So we didn't actually cost us 680,000.
Yeah, this is just an expenditure report, so that's sort of the point I was making with the Jobs for Nature, where we should reflect the expenditure in this report, but there is associated income with some of these activities, like that farm plans that's not picked up within this.
So 618 hasn't been spent.
Well,
it has been, but not
Funding to offset it.
Thank you.
So it'll be an other income. or
Correct,
something.
yeah.
Okay, page 104 then.
Oh, I'm going to go to 105.
105, you're on there, Alistair. Yeah.
My old friend, the Bluff Haul Out facility. We budgeted 80, spent 28. We need that to happen. What's happening?
So there is some work happening on that, and Patrick may be a good place to speak to that one.
So there are two work streams, Alistair. One is ensuring that consent remains in place and the Bluff Haul Out facility can continue to operate. And that's something that the ICN team is progressing. There's a separate work stream that needs more conversation, and that's about developing what's known as a Treasury Better Business Case style business case to go to central government to get regional funding to build a more substantial haul-out facility that will meet the future needs of the region. That one, Stephen and I have had a couple of conversations about, and we need to confirm that it's sensible for ES to put that business case together. If we conclude that that is the case, then I'll be sponsoring and leading that piece of work.
Alistair?
I've been here for 4 years and a bit, and we started out on this thing way back. Is there a completion time? Can you give us a completion time, Patrick?
So if we progress with developing the business case, then that's a 6-month piece of work to produce it.
And then it's to build it, and all of the little critters and things are getting spread everywhere through our ocean.
So if we progress with the business case, build a robust business case, 6-month exercise to do that. Part of building the business case would be tendering for the work and getting a really good understanding of what the cost of building the facility would look like. And part of the business case would answer the question of then who's going to own and operate it, what's the cost of building it, how long is it going to take to build it, when will it be operational, all of those things fall down the business case process.
Okay. I've got a question from Morris, actually.
No, yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that same page, 105, I see that the wetlands and learning from the land, nothing much has been done there. We're constantly being promised that we're going to get on with wetland building and promotion. It looks a little bit worrying.
There is wetland work and wetland expenditure taking place, but it's been, as we subsequently found out, been coded to other work programs, and so it's just a matter of that particular code not being utilised for that specific work. But that's been fixed, and so for 26-27, that code those funds will be used for that expenditure.
Okay.
Okay, I've got one from Paul.
I think Jeremy was first, but then I'm.
Well, you first.
Going back to the haul-out facility with regards to the lack of spend, and this has come up before, and I think I've actually asked, hey, let's get onto a business case model, let's get it out there, let's get it tendered, let's get some movement, let's spend the money to try and get some sort of action on this. And I think that's been said by a couple of us over the last few years. It would be good to see some action. We don't, I know other authorities regionally in our area have spent money historically on projects that are costing ratepayers money because they haven't really worked, haven't been needed. But we're in the position where we've got something that is needed and will work. We're not spending the money on it and getting it going. So it's really, there's a fine line where we need to get it going.
Yeah, look, if I can just comment quickly. So what we need to do, so there's a consultant that's been doing a piece of work on this. I've told him to halt actually the work that he's doing, because what we need to do is confirm that the CE is comfortable with progressing with the business case. You as councillors want us to progress with the business case, and that the Regional Infrastructure Fund, who would be the recipient of the business case, is open to receiving a business case and likely to agree to fund the work. So we're looking to tick those boxes off, and then we will get the business case underway and developed, confident that we're not wasting money doing so. The business case is going to ask for something in the order of $15 to $30 million to build the facility, and what we don't want to do is have somebody producing a piece of work that's going to be completely unsupported when we conclude the work. So that's all we're trying to do, is line up that the senior stakeholders are aligned behind this business case, and then we'll get the business case underway. There are some complexities associated with the business case that we need to solve during the business case process. So, for example, who should own and operate the facility once it's built? Are we the people that should be producing the business case? Is it going to be something commercial? Is it going to be something that might be council controlled, owned? What does that look like? Those are the sorts of questions that we need to answer. But with Stephen being new to the organisation, Rob having asked me to sponsor the development of the business case immediately before Stephen started, we're just working to make sure that Stephen's comfortable with how we progress it, you're comfortable with how we progress it, and then we're at that point, very happy to get on and get it written.
So exactly what you've explained there, and you put a halt on it, is, if I remember rightly, what we asked for was to the money that we've got sitting there budgeted, 52,000. We're not going to spend it on some sort of idea to come forward with a case on whether we go towards a private industry injected project or a co-worked project or a council owned project or anything. I think that the whole idea was we move forward and get something.
Yeah.
And now you're saying that everything that you've said are the things that we've asked for. are we not doing it because we've already made up our mind it's going to cost $30 million and we're scared of that?
No, the reason we've put it on hold is because we didn't want the consultant to use up all the available budget.
Well, we don't want consultants doing that, do we?
We don't want the budget used up before we're clear about how we're going to progress with this business case. So once we are clear, then we'll engage that consultant and we'll develop the business case and I'll sponsor it, and it will take about 6 months to produce it. But if we just let the activities happen as they're currently happening, then we run the risk of running out of budget to do the business case before we're clear about the fact we are going to produce it. So we're just getting that right.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yeah, no, there's been lots of talk about this over the years, and there has been some money spent in different directions. The reality is that we've got a new industry coming into play. I don't know, he's been given the okay, so there are major stakeholders in this. And I know we probably haven't been as proactive, but now's the time to really go towards the government for funding. You got iwi, you got Southport, all these things are going to have to probably step up, and we're going to be naturally going to be involved. Whatever councils there are, will be involved, and it's certainly going to help us with that because the biosecurity comes into big play. You've got an industry out there, $1 billion industry, and you're talking 30 million. That doesn't sound like a big number to actually help enhance those industries. So like we need to get on with it. But it's actually getting the right people in the room to making sure it's all there, and it'd certainly be quite a good around the regional infrastructure fund. The government would be probably like to see this because it's growing the economy, going to be a major part of that discussion. So I'm happy to do the scoping, but we want to just make sure everybody's on board and then really hit it hard. That's my view on it. So we still need to get it going.
Well, sorry, to that respect, we could be sitting here already with the project done, charging out, new industry happening, income projected.
We wouldn't have written a $30 million check out for it. Back then.
That's what I'm saying. Have we stalled this project because we've assumed straight away before the business case has been done that it's going to cost $30 million? We have to maintain that there's a whole raft of different scenarios to move forward within this area, and we've spent years on this, and we still haven't got past the first hurdle. With a great,
I think it should be focusing on a $30 million. It's only a number there, but it's the first time I've heard 30 million too.
We are focusing on it.
But I mean, it is what it will be for the industry. Sorry.
Okay, Ewan?
Yeah, but I suppose to that point, Paul, conversation ahead on Monday would suggest, and Patrick's probably tried to allude to it, but there's a lot of moving parts here and a lot of developing moving parts. And so the process around scoping needs to have a line of sight around just what that future capacity and capability needs to be.
Put on hold.
So there isn't at this, and that's sort of what you're alluding to, Patrick, isn't it?
Yeah.
And funding's part of it.
Yeah. No, look. So I guess a good way of looking at it is new people involved with it. So I'm going to be the sponsor for this business case. Stephen, as the new CE, needs to be comfortable with the direction. And I've produced some briefing notes for Stephen on this piece of work. But the logical order is get the CE comfortable, get you as councillors comfortable, early testing with the Regional Infrastructure Fund that they're receptive to receiving a case of this sort of magnitude, and then get the piece of work done in earnest. That's the logical order.
Industry discussion.
And when we produce the business case, there are multiple stakeholders that need to be involved, such as ICC, the port industry, and others, and we'll work in partnership with them to produce the case. But But if we don't tick those boxes off, we run the risk of producing a case that's not supported by the CE, not supported by yourselves, and gets rejected by the RIF, in which case we've spent $80,000 producing something that's got no value. So we're just trying to line things up logically.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. That looks pretty clear. Phil, have you got
Well,
anything?
I was just going to say, I think it's entirely appropriate that we are very diligent with our doing our homework on this before we start squandering ratepayers' money on something that is untested with industry or unproven. If there was a commercial business case for this 5 years ago when it was first discussed, some clever business person would have done this. But there isn't a commercial business case 5 years ago. That's why we were suggesting it as a public good investment. But at that time, we had no idea what was going to be the cost for the investment up front, what was going to be the cost of operating it, how were we going to manage that. So this level of homework, given the complexity of something that wasn't commercially viable at the outset when it was first discussed, and given the complexity involved with a number of stakeholders, I think it's absolutely essential that we do the homework and understand what are we signing up to before we start putting significant amounts of Southern ratepayers' cash into this.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil. Stephen?
Yeah, through the chair. So that, I think Patrick's given you a really good answer. That is exactly what I have asked from Patrick. So what the deputy chair's just talked to, understanding, and look, I don't want to prolong this conversation longer than it needs to be, but and I can absolutely hear there's a lot of history and context here. So, and I'm the new guy walking in, but I want to understand what is our role in this really, really clearly. What are the risks around this? I've been involved in these sorts of things before, as Patrick has as well. And whilst it might not be $30 million, we're certainly talking millions of dollars. So we just need to go in with our eyes wide open. I don't think that will take us long. So I've asked those questions. My commitment to you is to get through understanding whether or not we should be doing this and bringing you that advice so you can make a proper decision and understand what our role is, what the role of others might be, and the trade-offs you might be making, so that you can make a really good decision, and we can either decide to get on with it or not get on with it.
Thank you for that. But you know, I don't want to hear the word squandering money, ratepayers' money. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we put a line in the sand at the moment on the budgeted monies and spending on this project. This is this year. Look back at the money we've spent on this over numerous years. Why is this year any different? Because we've got a new CE, sure, but we shouldn't have councillors sitting here saying just because of this year we don't want to squander the money. Well, we've already spent the money. We've already invested in this process for a number of years. Why didn't we stop it 3 years ago, if that was the case? Why now? You know, we need to make sure that we are getting the best value for the budgeted money that we've put towards this to make sure that we move forward in the best possible way. Whether we're going to be spending that budgeted money in the wrong place on consultants to come up with a business plan, I don't know.
I think we've got to a place where Stephen's going to come back to us with more, and we're going to have further discussion. So maybe we move on. Okay, page 106. Any questions with page 106? 107. Page number 108.
With regards to the coast and marine science, we're down quite a bit there. This is a crucially important part of our region, so why we not spend as much. We were told that inspections were more prevalent, I think, at the regulatory committee. There's more inspections in the coast areas. I'm just wondering, with regards to the science side of it, are we getting details from the science department through other means, through other people doing the science for us, or what?
Yeah, but it's check in with Karen on.
Yeah.
Alistair? I note that we've got underspending in the first two specifically, water and land science and water and land science, SS and SI. What's the reason for that? Can you tell us, Don? Was it understaffed or?
Yeah, I can tell you some of the contributing factors is those teams for the best part of the first half of the year were highly understaffed in that area. On the back end of the calendar year around December-ish, there have been some key appointments made into that area, and so that expenditure did start to pick up as those programs could start to be driven in Q3, Q4. And so that certainly, resourcing certainly was one of the contributing factors for a delay on some of that planned expenditure.
Because I went along to the home show there on Saturday, and one of the most important things was water quality on the thing. So we've got to really respond to that, I think.
That's really quickly through the chair. You've got a session this afternoon, which is on our science programs. You'll be having a workshop, which Karen is going to run you on, talking about what you as council and as governors think in terms of priority around where we should be focusing resources and things for our different science programs. So that'll be a great place to talk more about it.
Because those two lines of coastal marine science and climate adaptation science, we've only spent around about probably 20% of that of what was budgeted. In science, we keep getting told is the most important the tools that we use.
Yeah,
Just like especially in our coastal sites. Yeah, well, we could afford now, we could afford
Sure, some good questions this afternoon.
Yep, good. Yeah, I've highlighted it.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of 9.5, the business plan update. No more questions? Can I have a mover and second? Thanks, Alice. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Names? Carried. Thank you. Yep. Okay, LTP performance reporting. Marcus.
Thanks very much, Chairman. The report on this one is pretty brief, but it's effectively the update on the long-term plan performance for the year end from the previous financial year. Effectively, in the report, we've got 34 long-term plan measures, which is our commitment to the community. We've got 28 measures that are on track, and we've got 8 measures that are off track. So for quarter four and year end, we're looking at about 76% of targets being achieved, and the key pieces in the appendices are 1 and 2, which probably pose just a bit of a page turn like we have done in the previous agenda item, just to work through any sort of questions that arise across appendix 1. I can talk to briefly the ones where we are off track. If that's the best way, Chairman.
Yeah, well, it'd be good to talk about ones that are, most of them are there, but the ones in the statutory ones that haven't been met, probably. So
Certainly, and I may call on members of the gallery too to help out where I'm not quite across all the detail. So the first one is around the regional policy statement and regional plans. The plan stop has been a significant impediment to achieving that first level of service there, with the ministerial direction around slowing things down. So council had wanted to plan change a number or do some progressive plan changes on our planning documents, but we've been unable to progress those forward to the ministerial direction on that. That's the question from that one. I'll move on to the next. Second one there that was not complete was around the resource consent processing timeframes. So especially requirements are effectively in place to ensure that decisions are made on time, and effectively over the course of the year, there's a couple of quarters there that we dropped from that 99% underneath. So 95% for quarter four was the result there.
Still pretty good.
Yep. And a number of reasons for that too. Eventually, like going back and liaising with decision holders or consent holders to make sure that the decision is a quality outcome that limits objections and appeals and those sorts of things too, which isn't actually explained in the statutory timeframes for decision making. Moving through onto page 114, number 9 there. Number of integrated catchment plans developed in partnership with iwi and the community. So the target was an increase on previous years, and across all the 4 quarters, there haven't been any integrated catchment management plans developed this year. We're moving through onto the next page, 116, measure number 14, percentage of major flood protection and control works, plans, repair, renewal schedule completed. The key standards defined in relevant planning documents. So the target was seeking greater than 90%, and it's read across all 4 quarters and indicating that the initiative is currently on hold. Well, the most appropriate method is to plan, monitor and operationalise the remedial works required on environment, health and flood banks, and there's an update coming to the Integrated Catchment Management Committee in September on this program of works moving forward for this financial year.
Sorry, yeah. Does this relate to all of the grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 issues with flood banks that we've talked about for a number of years, and itemising and catching what they are, so that we can come up with a plan for future works? It was still read and I think we spoke to 4 years ago when I turned up. Is that what it's in relation to, or is it? So I know you, Chair, have asked a lot of questions regarding works on flood banks and the defects. And is this what this relates to, is measuring the defects on the flood banks to make sure that we have a good work program to improve and remediate those defects?
I'm not sure what it does, Paul. I actually wonder if it's just Kanoa and river works clashing a little bit, and a lot of resources going into that.
Whatever it is, it's currently on hold.
Yes.
Kanoa's not on hold.
No, but I think it's the resourcing of that. I'm not sure, but maybe we need to
understanding of that, because it does say, to monitor and operationalise the remedial works required on the environment, health and flood bank. So if that relates back to defects, then I thought we were working on that. I don't want that initiative to be on hold. Patrick?
Can I offer a suggestion that we take an action that we'll put forward to the ICM committee to explain the measure?
Please. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, Marcus, I didn't want to put you.
Yeah, I don't particularly ask for you either, but I understand that the decision will be coming through soon. Measure number 19, organisational greenhouse gas emissions reduce in line with the 2050 net zero target. So Q4 effectively indicates that the milestone has not been achieved. The year is formal emissions reduction plan was not developed, and therefore we are not able to reduce in line with the plan. I think that's the explanation for why we missed that measure.
Oh, so we used to have the subcommittee dedicated to climate change. And when that committee was folded, the responsibility was transferred elsewhere. This can't recall exactly where it was transferred to. Do we know where or which committee would have picked up responsibility for progressing that particular target? Through you, Chair, was the strategy and policy committee, is my understanding. Okay. So that setting of the target that is yet to be set for the regional council would now be something that the strategy and policy committee would assume would pick it up.
Yeah, I believe that would be the best location for it, considering it would be an organisation-wide plan to reduce emissions. The strategy and policy committee. Yeah.
Okay. We also have a question from Morris. Oh, I can't hear you, Morris.
All right. Yep. How's that? Is that better?
Yep.
Yeah. No. I understand that Patrick might be able to explain this a bit more. That we are we do have a problem at the moment with meeting our goals, partly because, Patrick, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, partly because of a lot of the physical work that's going on, the canoa work, and the machinery that you need to use for this cannot be driven by electricity at the moment. So we are, because of that particular part of our operation, unlikely to be able to meet our goals as they were originally set. So there's a need to separate that out and identify that as something different. I'm not sure exactly whether that's legitimate or not. Patrick will be able to explain that. But we are going to need to focus on the things that we can do in-house, if you like, to meet those goals, such as reducing, by electrifying our fleet, for example, is one thing that we could do. So I think a further explanation of that would be useful, so that when it does go back to the Strategy and Policy Committee, or when there's an agenda item in that committee for that, that can be explained. And it's a bit depressing to see that we're not going to be able to meet our goals, because that's not really acceptable. Thank you.
Just picking up on some of the points that Morris has raised. And a little bit of context, that the GHG reporting, we've got a few challenges with it. So first of all, the way in which the auditable reporting is constructed means that something like 2/3 of the emissions that we measure are either how our staff get to work or how our contractors consume diesel when they're pushing up stop banks and so on. So as we do more and more canoa work, we're going to emit more and more emissions. And putting together a target of zero net emissions by 2050 in the current settings is unrealistic. So if we can directly influence things like our vehicle fleet and the building and the emissions that come from those, we can't get much traction on 15% of our total emissions and improving on those. That's the challenge. So what I'm keen to explore and put back through you for approval is changing our focus a little bit. The other challenge is that when this was put together, the auditors commented on it because there's no plan that would get us to zero by 2050. So what I'm keen to explore is, can we move away from this audited GHG emissions reporting altogether and instead bring something to you that's much more straightforward and is focused on our directly controllable things like our fleet and like our building, put some sensible targets around those, and then you can monitor our performance as we move towards achieving those targets. That feels to me a lot more pragmatic and realistic. And it then starts the sorts of conversations about should we invest more in the fleet, make it greener, and have a plan that sees our emissions reduce? Should we, notwithstanding the building is end of life, are there things we should be doing on the building? What are the things that we can do on the directly controllables? That would be a better way to approach this, in my opinion. But that's what we'll be proposing when we've did all that.
Yeah, look, we've got to be practical about this. We're actually spending money and burning diesel to fix some of the climate issues that we're causing, so to speak. But it has to be done. There's nothing else. We've got to sort out some of these floodplains and we're going to be expanding into it. So this is going to be ever increasing part of our business that will cause emissions. There's nothing we can really do about that. Certainly, if we can separate it and say, well, it's just part of life at the moment. But if we're doing as much as we can that we can actually control within the building here, or how we work our own vehicles, well, that's the big positive. But that's if we're going to spend money, and huge money, to fix up some of the climate change issues with extreme weather, well, Burning diesel is going to be a big chunk of that. That's going to have the effect. So certainly separating those two would probably, it's very transparent and it shows very clear why we might not reach those targets if we combine it. It's buggered if we do and buggered if we don't, really. So just transparency around that would be a lot better.
I've got a question from Morris.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just carry on that conversation that Jeremy's been having with us. There's the opportunity to offset our emissions, of course, and this is a bit controversial, but I understand that Jeremy is carbon neutral on his farm now. He's taken or nearly.
Can I clarify that? I'm not carbon neutral. Don't. I will talk about that if you want.
Heading in that direction anyway. So there are,
No emissions.
We've got lots of land that we can plant trees on. I know it's not a perfect solution, but it does help. So that should be part of the conversation, I think, when we talk about reaching carbon neutral and take into account that we do have to do all these works to build stock banks, but we can do things to mitigate that as well. Thank you.
Ewan, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, more or as much a statement as anything. I think the first step, as Marcus has talked about, is actually bringing an agenda item to Stratton Pop. And so that through that process, then we actually start to formulate what a plan might look like. So, yeah.
So are you going to do an action point on this, Patrick, or what's your feeling?
Yes, I can put it through strategy and policy, but I'll put a recommendation forward.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
To clarify, is that to suggest that they lead on the development of an organisational formal emissions reduction plan? So, because that's articulated in the report as the reason why this has not been met, because of the lack of a formal emissions reduction plan.
Yeah, so what I would put forward as a recommendation is that we move away from the current GHG reporting framework. So we need to test that we can do that and replace it with an emissions reduction plan that is achievable. And that emissions reduction plan would be focused on the things that are in our direct and immediate control, like our fleet and our buildings.
Okay, we've heard a bit of discussion. We're going to put an action plan, do some work on that.
We certainly need to discuss that, because that doesn't align directly with the thinking of the Regional Climate Change Working Group at the moment. So we would need to reconcile and understand what are the trade-offs within that equation. So,
and we're going to have a future debate on it, I take it. So,
Yeah,
Marcus?
yeah, the same measure for this current financial year we're in terms of this time next year, we'll be reporting on the same measure around having a plan and then operating in accordance with that plan. So I think in the next long-term plan, we'll be able to have a bit of a reset of what a measurement could look like and what targets could look like. But at the moment, we're locked into this same measure occurring for this current financial year. So effectively, a plan and emissions that would reflect that is effectively what's going to achieve the measure in our long-term plan. We're locked in on having a plan and then seeking a reduction at this stage, and we can reset those measures in the next long-term plan.
Okay, Marcus.
Down 29, I think was the next one on page 24. So it was about agendas being circulated 5 working days prior to the meeting, which is above the statutory minimum of, I believe it's 2 days. So effectively our internal target has not been achieved. We are achieving statutory requirements. Number 31.
I've got a question from Jeremy on that.
Yeah, I'd like just to point that out. Like the reality is we do need time. I was quite surprised at how many that haven't been in 5 days. Everybody's got other jobs and other things to do, and sometimes even the weekend before, sometimes it's good Sunday reading and things like that. And I know specifically this week that we've got one on Monday or Thursday, I think. So I just want to reiterate that it's pretty important for us to get those out as soon as we can, to give us time to absorb them, because some are quite large documents to deal with. So we just want to really enforce that.
Through the chair, it was illuminating for me too. So you guys are busy. We've got a requirement to get this stuff to you. Occasionally it's all right on, when things come up, not getting it on time, but yeah, there's a hang of a lot that you're not getting on time. So, yep, I totally agree. We need to do better.
Right, it's a great comment, Steve, and I really enjoy getting a few days because at times it's a bit difficult, particularly if you have a computer in which, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Relating back to what Stephen said, yeah, it is illuminating, but the team need to know that this is increasingly important. It can't be left up to committee chairs to make sure that these agendas are out in time, because it may be that some committee chairs are holding up the agendas going out because they have more questions or not. We need to identify what the issue is, whether it's capacity, whether it's the introduction of what were the two words? More, too much information. So what the issue is, because it needs to be in a more timely fashion. Because as a chair of a committee, coming in 2 days beforehand to sit and go over an agenda is ideally fine, but the agenda should have been out a week or more prior to that, if you know what I mean. And if there's any issues, then some of the members of that committee can get a hold of the chair and say, hey, maybe you can ask this question, whatever to highlight, to forewarn what's going to happen during the meeting. So it'd be good just to work that out. You know what I mean?
Agree.
Thank you.
Morris is good.
Oh, Morris? You there, Morris?
Muted.
Morris?
I'm sorry, I've been muted, so you don't have to hear me coughing, but it should be right now. Go back to page 119. Sorry, this has green lines, but I wondered if the reporting could be a bit more specific. This is in my mind, a very important project, and that the way to progress it is to get in place these wetlands and flood detention bunds that can slow down the runoff. I know it's a big project, but and it says it's a critical program of work. It'd be really nice to know if we're actually got any work done on the ground. Are there physical things that have been put in place to try and progress this area?
Through you, Chair, effectively, as I understand, the Mataura Blueprint project is starting to shape up what their future looks like on the Mataura, and there's a whole bunch of work around that in the programmed moving forward. So there is definitely a lot of planning and scoping as to what that could look like. I think probably the ICM committee is possibly the best committee to get more detail on that Mataura Blueprint and that measure in the LPP moving forward.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll try and remember to bring it up then if it's not already on the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, you bring it up then, Morris. We've got 2 more red items to deal with, and then we're there, we, Marcus? So,
yeah.
So
next one is measure number 31 on page 125 around Official Information Act requests. For quarter 4, there were 39 new Lagoimas received, 10 were carried over from quarter 3, 35 were completed within the statutory 20 working day time frame, 12 were completed overdue, and 2 were still active at the end of the month. So non-compliance with that statutory requirement seems to be a significant uptick in previous years in this space, and some resourcing being found to help us with this moving forward.
yeah, it's a difficult one.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a lot of work done by the team with regards to Lagoimas and the increase of Lagoimas, and also the information that's being sent back to the people. So hopefully, I know the team are working really hard to ask those specific questions and narrow down the scope of what people are wanting. And it was discussed at the regulatory committee, and also hopefully trying to maintain a good level of service or reply, but not maybe some Lagoimas require a silver level of service and reply, not a gold them, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I know the team are working really hard, but there has been an increase, an uptake of lagoimas being asked. So, yeah.
Yeah, and potentially through the chair, it could be a good thing in the sense that people are more engaged and more interested in the affairs of regional council. So,
Yeah.
Are there opportunities to share information sooner before they ask questions, and communications and information on our website and other channels could be an opportunity in that space as well.
Yeah, having a lagoimas publicly available on their website might help. And I believe the other thing, isn't it, that people ask all the information you have on a person, so that's it narrowing down. So
Yes.
hopefully there's some ways through this, Stephen.
Every council and government department deals with this stuff, and I don't know, over the last, probably since COVID actually, the amount of lagoima requests I think across the public sector have increased massively. And you are absolutely right around how you treat them. So yeah, how you manage them. Some of them don't need to be a lagoima at all. They just need to respond to somebody and give them some information. You don't need to put them into the lagoima process. And some of them shouldn't be in the lagoima process at all. We should push back against them. And some of them we're able to charge and all those sorts of things and narrow down their questions. And yeah, and you are right, the team has spent a lot of time on this. So
But they're doing a good job and seeing where they can make improvements or reduce the amount of repeat.
Oh, well, it's a work in progress, I guess. Alfred?
Sorry, Stephen, can you define where we charged it? Why can't we just charge on all of them? Because it's costing us time, or our ratepayers time.
Marcus might want to comment further, but we can't just charge on every single one of them.
If it's over a certain threshold, I think it's about 20 hours or something you spend on them, you can start charging if it's more than a certain time you occupy on it. So trying to find that line and narrowing scope first, and then figuring out if it's going to step over and whether the customer's happy to charge. We pay to receive that information.
So it's very much like a lot of those things. I think I raised it at one of the meetings earlier a couple of years ago around noise complaints on airports in Australia. There was 54,000 noise complaints, but there was 28,000 from one person. So the likelihood is, measuring the lagoimas as in coming from multiple people, I would hate to think that there's a large percentage coming from one source of requests for lagoimas. You know what I mean? So,
good point.
That would be something to just check and measure. And that was something, I might not be accurate, but it was very close to those figures for noise complaints.
Okay. Well, no, Marcus?
Yeah, my measure for you, Chair, today is measure number 32, develop and implement our customer and stakeholder strategy. So effectively, Q4 progress on the customer strategy has been slower than anticipated. This reflects sustained focus on recruitment, maintaining levels of service continuity within the team with vacancies, and addressing other operational challenges across reception and executive support functions. Further advancement is anticipated as current resourcing pressures reduce. So your work to continue on this space moving forward.
Okay, that's it pretty much.
The only concluding comments on the report, Chair, is that the results are now with our auditors in terms of the annual report, and we'll be coming back with a full and final annual report for council to consider and approve. We'll have these measures post-audit. There may be a little bit of refinement as that fine-grained approach is given to these measures.
Oh, thank you, Marcus. No more questions?
I'm happy to move, Chair.
All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Move on to 9.7. Information Systems Technology and Management Update, page 142. We are running a bit late, like about half an hour there. So.
I'll cover this one. Our CIO's group efficiency, so she's not here this morning. Just some very brief talking points. So technology strategy delivery. continuing to make good progress against their technology strategy, focusing on modernising our core systems, improving our productivity and strengthening security, while keeping their services stable and reliable. Major programs underway. So you'll be aware that you approved the FMIS business case a couple of months ago. That has a signed contract, and there's a project that's been stood up to deliver it with Datacom as the client, and we've now got the project underway. So you'll get reporting on that in due course as that project progresses. We've also got a signed contract for a human resource information system, and that project is also underway. And the technology team is also working on Iris Next Gen, which needs to be stood up ahead of delivery in 2028. So those are some of the key initiatives that the team is working on. Other points that she has left me with, cybersecurity and resilience. So when we have the Risk and Assurance Committee, you'll receive the internal audit work that was done on our cybersecurity, what tools we have, and our ability to manage cyber threat. It was a very good audit. There's a work program that Jane and I have put together in response to that audit, and we'll step you through that in the Risk and Assurance Committee. But it comes down to getting the best out of the cybersecurity managed service that we buy, and ensuring that our people have got enough focus in terms of our internal cybersecurity. So we'll take you through that in a bit more depth in that committee. Looking ahead, so teams are focused on delivering the FMIS and HRIS, and preparing for Iris Next Gen, and standing up and getting that work program going on cybersecurity. So those are really the key points to reflect that in terms of our technology teams, and happy to take any questions.
You know, I just want to make a call and say thank you to the team, because it's not very often you get a report where everything's green.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Great to see, and obviously a lot of hard work by everyone. I know with the age of devices, we're still sort of, but that's diminishing. So, no, excellent report. Thank you. And if no one else, I'm happy to move there.
We have a second. Yes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Carried. Move on to the annual activity report, page 181. Get right.
Right. So probably the main call out is at your next committee meeting, you're going to see a number of these hefty documents for SOIs and annual reports for the organisations that we are associated with and monitor, so RSHL, Civic, Financial, Great South, and the LGFA. So what we're planning to do is to continue what we started a couple of committees ago, where we'll summarise those hefty documents for you. We'll put links in, but don't feel compelled to read the detailed documents if you don't want to. We'll make sure that the salient points are put to you as part of our the papers we put forward to committee.
Great initiative. Happy to move that. Cool. Happy to move.
Yep. Seconder.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's carried. Okay, we move on to extraordinary and urgent business, of which I don't think there is any. And we have got some public excluded, so.
In accordance with section 48(1) of the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act 1987, and the particular interests protected by section 7 of that act, that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely confirmation of the public excluded minutes from the Finance Performance Committee meeting on the 28th of May 2026.
Okay, moved. Thanks, Jeremy. Second, Phil. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
So cool. Okay, we're all good. Confirmation of minutes.